But now look, I mean, this art of asking questions and thinking questions in the present world, is that art still around?
Oh yeah. Oh, of course.
But for you, or
It is.
for you, probably, yeah, definitely. But did you go to graduate work after you?
No, I didn't. I really couldn't afford it. I mean, I wanted to. I liked it a lot, and I applied. I applied to Edinburgh, and I got in. They accepted me, but I think, it's not that rigorous. I mean, I've had a pretty decent background, and if you apply to philosophy graduate school in those days, you get in. So I get in, but then I try to arrange the finances, and I'm one of 10 children. I'm the second of 10, and I felt I couldn't really ask my father for any help, given that he had, another. He was educated. He had 3 or 4 in college all the time. It's a brutal for him. So I felt.
Was the OGI Bill around then?
Was, but the GI Bill gave you 4 years, and I had used them up.
Oh, okay. That's what I did.
Yeah. So I mean, there was nothing there to go to Edinburgh, so I would have to, and I would try to figure out how I would do it. And I thought, I could actually have done it. I mean, I could have. It would be airfare, and it was not. There was very, very few expenses involved. They would set me up with a teaching assistant thing, and so I wouldn't have, But I just really had no resources. I hadn't been to the dentist in 3 or 4 years. I had no clothing. I had 2 pairs of Levi's and a couple of striped shirts, and that was it. I mean, I didn't have my underwear was so tattered I couldn't. I was embarrassing. I mean, so I had nothing. So and I had no prospects of getting anything. I mean, and I've been perfectly happy living on nothing for a long time, but I thought it couldn't continue forever. I mean, now I was 26, going to be 27, and I didn't have 5 cents. I had trouble paying to go on. I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't go on. If I had to go on the T to Cambridge from Waltham, it was a struggle. I mean, I had to make a plan for that. So, it get a little oppressive. I mean, so I thought, well, I got to. And also, the politics of the war were still very enthralling. I didn't want to just leave that all behind. I thought I wanted to make a career decision that was not a philosophy professor, because I felt that, I don't know, that would be the track of going to Edinburgh. So I thought, well, I'd rather, let me put this decision off and get a few bucks together, and I never pulled the trigger to go back. So I just made another choice and started to work in politics. But, the impulse to read philosophy and to read, even the harder academic philosophy has never left me. And I still read a decent amount of it. I mean, I don't have the endurance I used to have. So Alistair McIntyre I read, and I read some Stuart Hampshire, and I'm interested in sort of political philosophy, so I read Lil Murray Bookchin, who's an anarchist from Vermont.
Have you read Susan? Susan Nyman's book, Evil in Modern Thought?
I don't know this one.
I mean, given the fact you're concerned with good and evil, she's like the rare philosopher actually deals with that issue. See, it's a perspective of philosophy, of good and evil. It's called Evil in Modern Thought. Susan Nyman. Yeah, she was a student of John Rawls, so you might find it interesting.
Oh yeah, Rawls. So but I actually think this Alistair McIntyre is somebody you might like too, if you're interested.
Oh yeah. Well, I have
be you for a while.
I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time. I have a couple of questions given. So, like many, I guess, well, it used to be working class boys. I mean, now it's probably women too. The military seemed to have given you the discipline you need to get along with life. And then philosophy, as you said, taught you the art of asking questions. In present society now, 50 years later, are those two options still around? Or are there ways to, try to come up with something else other than the military to give students the discipline they need? And is philosophy still around to teach people how to ask questions? Or does that even matter, asking questions anymore?
Well, I don't know. I think it's not, I think, the necessity. I mean, had I not, it's hard to get out of your own experience. I was didn't succeed as a suburban high school boy, and so I didn't succeed at that. And then I went into the military, not for discipline, but because I had to get away from my home, and I had to get away. I was in a bit of trouble, nothing serious, but a bit of trouble. I had to get away from the town, away from where I was, and so I stumbled into this war and this meaningful thing, and it made me, so it forced me. It's not something I really chose. I mean, I think circumstances impelled me in that direction. It wasn't. So I think the military is now, I think, more of a ticket to the middle class than it was. I mean, it's composed, it's voluntary military, which I happen to think is a terrible idea, is composed of people who have a paucity of opportunity. So I think there are others. There's certainly exceptions to that, but I think that's a great number of people. And I think it may give you some discipline. I mean, and maybe some skills and some time away from home, a chance to define yourself as opposed to being defined by your home and parents and you. So you have to take a little bit of control of your life, not much, but a little. And but those questions come because your experience is so, makes you impossible to live effectively without asking those questions. I mean, you really can't go through a war like that and not ask these questions. If you don't ask questions, you're going to end up with, in a psychiatric hospital, or you're going to end up with a lot of problems that you don't need to have if you simply do ask yourself the questions. I think it is around, but I think it's not current. I see no rebellion from no act of resistance or rebellion to the current military situations we're in. I don't know why we have to be in Afghanistan for all these years. Why I can understand trying to stabilize the situation in Iraq, but we're the ones why I can understand not trying to disrupt the thing in the first place to the extent that we did. If because you know that you have to go there stabilize it once you disrupt it, as you do so. But I think that is ultimately that is the thing that the questions and delving deeply into this without sentiment, intellectually, helps you stay sane, and it helps you attract the other things that keep you sane. You can have a healthy relationship, so you can have you insist that you don't allow yourself to develop too many bad habits because you're conscious of all this stuff. So that's where the questions are. I don't think it's as easy as it was because I think there's more conformity and more few of these questions, and the questions aren't as serious.
Well, you seem to have survived well. What if you're a teenage in high school now with the same problems you had back then? What were you think you'd still? Were there other ways other than the military and the philosophy?
Well, there wasn't then. There are now. I think there may be some other ways now. There's society seems a little gentler now than it did in terms of this stuff, at least.
It's a lot less violent.
And there's a lot. And the expectations aren't so rigid. You can. It's much more relaxed. I'm not sure that's always good, but in the case of people who don't fit in, I think it's probably pretty good.
What's your view on postmodernism? This view that language is reality, and that you said you wrote on ontology. Do you think language is reality, and we don't know any reality outside of it?
I hate it. I think it's awful. Because it deconstructs everything to the point of course, language is reality. You can say. This is not a modern notion. Auden said that W.H. Auden said that religion is the worship of language. And, it's hard to contradict him. Of course, it's not the worship of language, but, without language, there's probably no religion. You have to, they work together, but it's not exclusively language. I mean, there is more. There is something in addition to language. But I also like literature. And so the postmodern literature stuff is just terrible, I think, because everything is reduced to anthropology and to motive and to psyche, and there is also work. There is, if you try to, I especially hate this when it applies to authors of the past century, because you can't really deconstruct their work in such a way that you think, well, this is all the reason he was writing all this. The reason he was doing this is the effect of homosexuality, as opposed to, the work itself is subtle, and it's not about that, and it's sort of self-affirming, and it seems awful. It just seems smug. It's difficult to contradict it, but it seems like a smug sort of notion of an easy answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh.
I don't really care for postmodernism. It's a discussion of words. There is authentic experience, and if you live in your authentic experience, you have a different. Vietnam is a word, right?
But the experience is different.
Yeah, exactly right. But I think there are people for whom there is not that much difference between words and experience, because they're academic people that are, cosseted and living in sheltered lives, and so that is their experience, is language. They have haven't had much more, but it's not mine, and I don't know what kind of life that would be. I have no use for reason even to take it seriously. I don't think it means much. I mean, it's a philosophical fad, isn't it? I mean, it's a way to get the answers without doing the work, right?
Yeah.
By my lights, I saw it. Maybe a little harsh, huh?
No, I mean, that's my point. A lot of times I try to make is that the struggle is unfortunately part of life. That you can just struggle with words, but it's you're just creating a false reality. I mean, it's action that actually is the real struggle. And so I don't know. You wrote an ontology. Do you have a specific ontology or view on what's real from what isn't?
I don't have answers. I don't have answers. I just don't. I wish I did. I wish I could tell you. I don't.
You're Socrates.
Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable, right? I mean, I think that the big thing, the big reality is discomfort. The huge reality is the ability to accept discomfort and accept the notion that you don't have any answers. I mean, that's the hardest part about any kind of religious. Serious religious inquiry is that you're not going to know. You don't know, and people who do know are delusional. You just don't know, and you're never going to know. But you keep studying nonetheless, because that's the way it works. And so anyway, I thought your thing about the willingness to fight, and that this willingness is in a way a positive characteristic is right and wrong. I mean, it's a positive characteristic in that it's in terms of, if you look at the effects on the individual, but it can be distorted. It can be, I mean, it ennobles the individual to be willing to fight for what's right, or what their interests are, but it can be exploited, and it's limiting too. It seems to me it's there's a limit to how much it can yield, and the limits are profound. So I think you're right, but I think I think you're absolutely, there's no question you're right, but there's another side to it, which is that, because that's the thing that bothered me the most, that the motivation of these fellows who I saw were so torn up and so hurt so badly, were their motivation was always pure, and it was not. They had no notion that they'd be used for very little purpose or no purpose really. That the politicians wouldn't think that we should get out of there now. We've done what we're going to do, and there's no sense for another person to be hurt. That we've seen what we're going to see, and let's just shut this down. They couldn't possibly do that, just like they can't do it, and they're having trouble doing it in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. They don't like to shut it down because there's a variety of pressures on them. I mean, they're political pressures as well as others. And, so if you subvert noble intentions, that's a bad thing. That's terrible. And, it makes me cringe. Any kind of easy patriotism always upsets me. I have trouble, I always stand now for the Star Spangled Banner. I didn't for a long time. I always, I never do it without misgivings. And there's always a cost to that willingness to fight that is, horrifying. So,
but do you agree with Orwell that for often power is just an end in itself? Doesn't really matter what it's applied to?
I never argue with Orwell.
That's good.
Big mistake. I love Orwell. I'm still reading Orwell, for God's sake. What? I mean, you can't. I never. Of course, it's with anybody. That's that's pretty obvious, right?
Well, it seems obvious, but a lot of people seem to forget it because they're always
right. That doesn't mean no, it's not. Yeah, no, you're right there. Power is an end in itself, and you try to get them to give it up. See whether they, even if they make one mistake, they never give it up. Power and money, they don't give up. That's the lesson of politics. That's what politics is about.
Well, this is a good Socratic ending. I've taken up a lot of your time. Thank you very much.
It's fun. I'm afraid it's too boring for words, but maybe there's somebody.
Oh, it's real life. I mean, this shouldn't be boring. What should be boring is I don't know, Twitter. That should be boring, but
that is boring. This is Little League boring, right?
No, this isn't. Well, thanks a lot, sir.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to help. I mean, whatever I can do. And
all right. Take care of yourself and have a good day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.